Hello, welcome to the Pearly Eye Review. I'm PJ. I know it's been a long time. Had some personal things going on, but I'm back and I went to go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So here's my ticket. I went into this with caution because I'm an OG Spider-Man lover. I like Peter Parker. The thing about it is, whenever something from the comic books or something from a novel is going to be brought to the cinema, you never know how they're going to present it. I'm glad that in this film they kept, while introducing Miles Morales, they kept the original Spider-Man very much involved, and he wasn't forgotten. So I'm happy about that. The thing about it is if you're a Spider-Man fan, for me, what I did was I sat there and tried to compare what are Peter and Miles's similarities. Well, for one thing, Miles doesn't get bullied like Peter. He actually has friends, whereas Peter Parker did not. But they're very similar in their sense of humor. They're very sarcastic. They talk a lot. They have that fast pace of talking. The story starts off with just really getting, if you don't know who Miles Morales is, really getting to know his home life, his parents, his relatives, his friends, kids that he goes to school with, things like that. And one night he was hanging out with his uncle and gets bitten by a spider. He starts freaking out. He tries to backtrack where he had gotten bitten to figure out what the spider is, what happened to him, and then he runs into Spider-Man and Kingpin. And so Kingpin, his motive is to mess with sort of time and space, quantum physics and all that, because he wants something. Now this is a no spoilers review, so I'm trying to sort of describe bits and pieces of the story without giving too much away. And so he runs, as I was saying, he runs into Spider-Man, and then they sort of team up, and along with Miles and Peter Parker, all these other Spider-Men and women, because sort of the timeline, alternate realities, sort of join in with Miles's world. So it's not only Miles, it's Peter Parker and Spider-Gwen, Penny Parker, which I loved. I forget the other one. He's the black and white Spider-Man. He's from the 1930s. And there's also another favorite of mine, the parody of Spider-Man, Peter Porker, Spider-Man, well, Spider-Ham. So they team up with Miles to get the machine is called a collider to fix the key. Miles accidentally broke the override key to sort of stop the collider machine that messes with time and alternate realities. And so now he needs the help of the Spider-Men and women to help them get back to their reality that they zapped into, because all of them zapped into Miles. They need to get back to their own. So I really liked Peter Parker in this. I think Sony has finally found their Peter Parker. I think, back in 2002, it was just sort of that thing of, you kind of had to accept what you got, because it was getting to a point where superhero movies they were seen as something sort of, I don't know, geeky, not really liked. They're not as popular. At some point back in the 70s with Superman, and then the 80s with Batman, sort of, and Tim Burton's Batman sort of brought it back. But then after that, it was sort of scarce for superhero movies. And then back in 2000, as I said, 2002, Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire one, sort of brought that interest in superhero movies back, and with a few others, Blade also, and a few others. You had to accept, well, that was a Spider-Man we're going to get. Tobey Maguire wouldn't have been my choice, but I mean, for Sam Raimi's version of him, he was okay. And then later on, they moved on and rebooted it with Andrew Garfield. Well, now, some of you all may have liked Andrew Garfield. He's a great actor. But his Spider-Man didn't do it for me. I sort of lost interest with Spider-Man in his movie form. I did not like the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. He didn't do it for me. The MCU with the Avengers, the group films, now they brought Spider-Man back with Tom Holland, which I love. I think the MCU has the teenage Spider-Man right, and I think finally what's so funny, Sony has got the adult Spider-Man right in animation form. I think that's very ironic. It's because they had, they struggled with him in live action for a long time. Sony just could not get it right. I just wasn't satisfied. I thought Tobey Maguire was okay. Didn't like Andrew Garfield, as I said. But it was like, whatever. I think I really like this Spider-Man, this animated, this adult Spider-Man. And this is what I've been looking for. And, some people may say it reminds them of other animated shows, the newer one. But for me, it reminded me when I was little, the 90s Spider-Man, in terms of the jokes and the fast-paced talking and seriously, the sarcasm from Spider-Man. The 90s cartoon, voiced by Chris D. Barnes. Yeah, it really reminded me of that. Other things that I liked about Spider-Man, this movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I like the art style. It is, surprisingly, believe it or not, this is part CGI. They did paint some textures in there. It's a blend of hand-painted stuff and also, of course, it's overall CGI, but the style is not your traditional CGI, which I appreciate it. It sort of tricks the eye into making it look like a moving painting, which I definitely appreciated, because for me, you may be fine with it, but I'm getting CGI, 3D, Toy Story style art and illumination fatigue. It just bothers me so much, is that's all we see. Everything's in 3D, that 3D looking style. And I just like that this is it looks like a moving painting. Some parts it looks sort of 2D. But I thought the art, what they chose was outstanding. I wanted to mention that I like the facial expressions on the mask of the characters. If you ever read Spider-Man comic books, you'll know that whenever he is surprised, his eyes get really big. When he's angry or annoyed, his eyes get really small. Or when he's confused, one is up, one is down. They did that. They did a very good job of that in this movie. And also the different shapes of the mask. Peter Parker has a shorter haircut. The shape of his head inside the mask is more round. I noticed with Miles Morales, because he has an afro and his hair is a little bit longer, it's kind of puffed up in the back near his crown area, and that made a whole lot more sense, and I really appreciated that they paid attention to detail like that. But I'm just saying the character design, I hope they do that for future animated films at Sony. What else I liked? I liked the fact that it wasn't about trying to replace Peter Parker. It was, they seriously say in the movie, anybody can be Spider-Man. It's just, you know, I'm not the only one, and all of them were saying that. Like, hey, it's not just me. I don't feel so alone with these powers. There can be a Miles Morales. There can still be Peter Parker without trying to erase him and say that he never existed, which that was my main concern, especially when he came out in comic book form. I'm all for, having diversity, of course, but, don't sit up and say that the OG Spider-Man does not exist. They weren't really saying that, but it kind of felt that way. Like, come on. You can't say, and Spider-Man is a very relatable character. That's why I love him so much, because, he's got problems, problems that could really happen in real life. And, everybody's a misfit. You identify with that. I liked the classic moments that things that happened to Peter Parker, sort of mirror Peter Parker, and then they start happening to Miles in this. Very classic emotional moments. I like all of the costumes, but I like the costumes designs, but I had already seen it. If you've seen the comic books, you picked up one, and you kind of know what, especially Spider-Gwen, what she looks like in Miles. I really liked all their costumes. Dislike, I do like the fighting in this, because Spider-Man's fast pace, he moves, he doesn't stop. He's all over the place. I mean, his senses, just the way he dodges, he jumps, he moves, it was A+ in this movie. But when the final fight came, with them finally planning to get back to their own worlds, too many colors. I know I just said I like the art style, but it was like a box of crayons just threw up all over the screen. I know it's supposed to show that once the machine was sort of, malfunctioning and going kind of crazy, the worlds are sort of being crumbled up together, all the different dimensions and worlds, and it was just pink, green, but it was a lot. And I felt like that could have wrapped up a little bit quicker. I know Miles has to have his moment to shine. I didn't mind, but it was like, just come on, let's do. We know what's going to happen. Just get to it. And finally, what my overall thoughts. As a Spider-Man fan, I liked it. Now, if you're not a comic book person, not really a Spider-Man fan, you watch Spider-Man casually, you just can't tell the difference. Like, what's what all these Spider-Mans? That has something to do with the MCU. Why is there a girl? Why is there an anime spider? What's going on? Boy, I'd say give it a chance, but it's kid friendly. But there are some, adults can sit through it. I'd say if you're not a huge fan, maybe stay at home and watch it at home, however you watch your movies, DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming. If you just casually, really aren't sure about what's going on. Well, I would say this. Pick up a comic book of the original Spider-Man and Miles, and the new one, Miles Morales, and different Spider-Men and women are out there, so you won't be too confused. That's my concern. Some people may be confused as to what's going on. But I mean, see it like a matinee or something like that. If you're not really into it, you're just curious about it. But if you are a huge fan like me, you'll see Spider-Man no matter what. You better get your butt to the theater. Get your ass to the theater. Get to the theater and see this. It was fun. It was fun. It wasn't over the top, but it was just enough. This is definitely a must-see for huge Spider-Man fans, especially fans of Miles Morales. So go see it. Lastly, my next review will be of Mary Poppins Returns. So I'll be reviewing that and just giving my thoughts on, does it make me feel how I felt when I was little and I watched it on TV, like how I felt, the joy I felt while watching the original. So my next review will be Mary Poppins. So give a like, subscribe, and tell me if you saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What did you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you think it was fun? Do you think Sony finally got, some version of Spider-Man, the adult version of Spider-Man right? I think they did. And I think they need to stick with this if they want to continue with Miles Morales or this particular Spider-Man. So I just want to say thanks. And that's my review. Bye.